Preparing a live stream. Stream. All right, so welcome to Quantum Healing Today. Today we have Susanne Wilson with us, and she is a Carefree medium from Arizona. She has amazing stories to share, and thank you very much for joining us today, Susanne. How are you doing?
I'm thrilled to be here, Melanie. I know we met briefly a couple of years ago in Los Angeles, and I thank you for remembering me and reaching out.
Of course, it's been such a blessing to meet you in person and to get to know about you. And I saw you at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles, and that was the first time I ever met you, and to learn more about you, your history, and your experiences. That's just something that I just find fascinating and would like to share that with the world a little bit more. And so I would like to learn about you and how you got started and just kind of how that led you to where you are now.
Well, how I got started was just being born, because I was one of those very strange children that didn't quite fit in and play with the other kids. So, Melanie, my problem was that I was busy looking at auras and seeing spirit loved ones around other kids. And it started really, really early in my life. And it takes a while for a child to realize they're different. And I realized I was different through being bullied, which is not the best introduction to the rough-hewn classroom that Earth tends to be. But I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I would go to school and I would say, there's somebody standing there with you. And then the other child, most of them weren't as tuned in. Some were, but they would look around and go, oh, she's just messing with me. And so I got this reputation and was called Crazy Susie. So I knew early on I was different, but I spent a lot of my adult life just fitting in and acquiring stuff and getting an education, making it in academe in the university. I was at director level for a Center for Leadership at a university. I went into the private sector and was a human resources executive for a Fortune 500 company. But I'll tell you what, all the while I was secretly doing my psychic and medium thing. And I say secretly because I was ashamed. I'll own it. I was ashamed of being woo woo. I had spent a lot of money on college, getting a master's degree, and I wanted that to pay off. And I don't think I was the greatest person with the greatest values for a lot of that time, because I was very much into things and promotions and getting ahead no matter what. But in 2007, I had anaphylaxis, went into shock, stopped breathing, left the body. And when I got back into the body, everything changed. I had to get help to learn how to turn off all of the spiritual skills that I had because they were messing with my life. And over time, I realized just step out of this whole corporate world and don't worry about how you're going to make a living. It'll figure itself out. I think John Lennon said it best back when he said, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans, because I'm supposed to be right now a college professor, having amassed all kinds of money through stock options in my corporate career, and writing academic papers and that sort of thing. And instead, I'm teaching people how to develop their own intuition and mediumship abilities. So that's where I am, and that's where I've come from.
That's pretty awesome. And so, and through that journey, what was it for you that helped you embrace that? I don't know, maybe if it was fear to for that intuition, what was it for you that helped you get over that?
You said the magic word, and I know you deal with helping people overcome fear and quantum healing for sure. I think my first helper, my first champion and mentor, I'd have to give that credit, as I have before, to my granddad, my mom's dad, because he was actually a Protestant minister. And when I was a child, and I had him up till I was about 15 years old when he died suddenly, but he told me to don't worry about the bullies at school, just stop talking about it. But guess what? I see this stuff too. And that it's a gift from a loving God who knows we need all of the abilities that we have. At some point, I'd figure out the right thing to do with those abilities. But meanwhile, you might want to keep your mouth shut, most of the time when you're seeing these things. And we had a lot of late night conversations. When I would get off of school as a child on Friday, he'd pick me up and I'd spend the whole weekend there. Saturday, we'd usually go to horror movies. But these were like, oh, they were so tame, Melanie, like Vincent Price, we're talking like 70s. And we loved that genre. We loved the jump scares and those sorts of things. But then we'd have these talks about God, about angels, about reincarnation. He actually was, I believe, a closeted medium himself, and he did hypnosis to help people with chronic pain, but he also did past life regression hypnosis, and he had past life regression hypnosis. And I was privileged to be alive when he was regressed, and he spoke in some kind of dialogue that no one recognized in one of his past lives. And we sent that, but back then it was a big tape, like a reel-to-reel tape recorder. We sent that to a university, and they identified it as an ancient Inuit dialect that there's no way he could have studied. The only thing he ever studied was he spoke English and Spanish. That's it. And so I got to know early on that I wasn't just weird, that I was differently abled, and I got to see a man who really lived the principles of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and the golden rule. He lived those principles, and he lived a life of service. And so I knew that those two things worked together, and it grounded me. It got me centered, which is really, really helpful, because if I didn't have some kind of basis, or even now a practice to be centered, I could probably just sit and talk to spirits all day, or non-human intelligent beings, or interdimensional allies, as I call them. So I got a really good grounding there, and that dispelled some of the fear, but it would take maturity and life experiences, and then a near-death experience to get to the point where I would say, look, just make this your life's work. Just do it. Just go for it. So it's a process. I don't think the near-death experience did it all on its own, but it sure woke me up to a different way of living and a different set of values.
Right. That must have been a push for you in that time, in that near-death experience. Can you share with us what happened in that time?
Yeah, what happened to me was so unexpected, but it happened in a doctor's office, and they're not going to let you die physically if there's any way to prevent it. So it was a good place to have it. But I was having allergy tests, and I'm that one in, several tens of thousands of persons that can have anaphylactic shock from allergens being injected in my arm. And that's what happened. It was very, very scary and wonderful. while I was getting the injections, they had told me, the tech that was doing it said, you know, we're upping the dosages. This is your second time back. So there are some things we want to retest and see. And I got very hot and clammy, like cold and clammy and hot and sweaty all at the same time. I knew that was not normal. And I told her, and she did go and get help. But meanwhile, I was sitting there with my throat closing up, and I started just making this honking like a goose sound. And when I talk to you about that, my stomach kind of goes flip flop a little, because I remember that so vividly. It's hold on a second, I gotta like let that feeling go. So then the next feeling is really wonderful. The tech came back. She came back with another technician and two doctors, and I heard them say, hold her up. And so I had a technician on either arm holding me sitting up because I was falling back. And then the living people in the room, the two doctors and the two techs, did not look like real people. All of a sudden, they looked like cardboard cutouts of people. They had no real life to them, to me. Their eyes were black and like just dead looking, like not real. And I remember thinking, this is strange. And I heard a popping sound like a champagne cork, and I was out of the body. I was behind my body, a little bit above it, and I even looked at the back of my hair. I even noticed what I was wearing, and it felt foreign to me, like, oh, I need to fix my hair there, or you know, it's just weird. It was just like I'm looking at a different person, another person. And then I noticed the one doctor was on the phone, and I would later find out he was calling an ambulance, and the other doctor was preparing an injection. They were moving in super slow-mo. I mean, they were barely moving. From my perspective, they were barely moving. I was moving. I was seeing colors and hearing beautiful, beautiful music. And the music was comforting. It came in these huge waves, kept going up in a crescendo. It was up music. It was like a major keys. The minor keys sound a little ominous. This was all the major keys. And I knew they weren't instruments. I couldn't place instruments. I'm musical. I'm a bit of a musician myself. And I was thinking, wow, these are like voices doing instruments somehow. I wanted to go to that music. I had to go check this out. That's all I cared about at that point. I'm like, I'm totally disinterested in that body and what these dead looking beings, doctors are doing. And then I felt arms around me, and I knew, oh, something big is happening, because these are my granddad's arms. And I couldn't see him. He's behind me. I could feel his arms. I was like, oh my gosh, it's you. Let's go. I want to go. And I don't remember him saying anything to me himself. Or seeing him at that point. I just knew in that way that you know. And now I'm real excited, and I want to keep going. They prepared an injection and stuck it in me to like bring me back into the body. And at first, when this first happened, I forgot about this for a day or two, but there was this really weird voice, like a robot, saying, your work has not started. And I came back into the body, and I was in an ambulance and went to the hospital. And then after that, I couldn't tune out spirit world. I couldn't tune out ETs. I couldn't tune out angels. And it was really hard to live a normal life. It was like I was on all the time. So the teachers I was going to secretly, in my secret double life as a psychic and mediumship development student, I had to go back and say, help me, I am messed up. And that just started a journey that ended up with me completely changing my life. And I'm glad, but it's a hard journey. I didn't just have this magical near-death experience and all of a sudden life is beautiful and wonderful and I've completely changed. It's a process. And I've heard from people since then that they went through a process too. And I feel like it's different for everybody. Mine was hard, but it has paid off. And every day I want to be a better person every day, better and better every single day.
Yes, yes. And thank you for continuing your work. I know that from that near-death experience, was it like your senses just flipped on even more? Like, were they more heightened after that?
Oh, yes, very much so. In the mediumship development circle,
Mhm.
we were taught how to tune in, how to rebalance, at the end of our exercises. I didn't have to tune in. And not only that, but since then, I've worked with scientists, one in particular, Dr. Gary Schwartz at University of Arizona. I've been subjected to double blind and triple blind studies under scientific methods to show that, this work is real and all of that. But he's taught me vocabulary over the years. What happened was I shifted from subjective clairs, meaning subjective clairvoyant, seeing in the mind's eye, subjective clairaudience, hearing through the inner ear. That near-death experience shot me like a catapult into objective clairs, meaning they're objects in the room with you. There's really a man's voice right in my face. There's really a woman or a child standing there in spirit. And that is freaky. That's like, people say they want that, Melanie. I'm here to tell you, be careful what you ask for. It's nice once in a while, but this was 24/7. This will make you go mad. And so my solution was to drink heavily, tune it out. And
Did that, I mean, I'm sure that interfered with your sleep and
everything.
daily patterns, and so your
Yeah,
outer world was just crumbling and
everything.
you had no
Go
choice.
into the bathroom and somebody pounding on the door and you're the only one home. I
Mhm.
mean, wondering if you're being watched in the shower. And really, all I had to figure out, and teachers helped me, but all I had to figure out was just turn to them and acknowledge them. And then just say, what do you need from me? And if
Mhm.
I can do it, or if I feel like doing it, you don't have to,
Right.
give them what they need. And most of them just wanted to be seen, just to, we all want to be seen, right?
Mhm.
And I did realize that I had the power. I did realize that I didn't need all that alcohol immediately after work to shut it down and drown it out. And I learned so much about best practices as a psychic, as a medium, just being a normal person living an intuitive life, because I went from the frying pan into the fire with my abilities. They'd been there all along, but they weren't crazy open and objectively there all
Right.
along. So it was the greatest training ground I probably could have had.
Mhm. And what type of practices really helped you through that process?
Well, people always mention prayer and meditation, and that's true, but it's your daily grounding and centering and your intention setting and gratitude. They have to be the practices that you like to do, or else you won't do them every day. So I recommend to people to come up with their own methods, borrow from here or there, create your own. And when you awaken in the morning, when there's a new day, reapply.
Mhm.
It's like rinse and repeat every day. My basic practices are the minute I'm awake, first I want to ask, what do I need to know today? Where was I last night in case I astral traveled or I brought back some wisdom? And then I'm grateful for this day. Use me as your instrument. I'm honored to be of service. help me help the most people heal today, reach the most people I can with helpful, hopeful healing information. And also, I do grounding and centering. I actually use Reiki. I used to teach it too, and I initiated a handful of Reiki master teachers, but I use it every single day for myself. I think any energetic practice that you use that gets you grounded and centered and reminds you that we're all connected, we're all part of a universal consciousness is good. But I'm setting an intention each day and I'm using gratitude to do it. I think what's important is that you have something to remind you. For me, I often say it's the toothbrush. When I see my toothbrush in the morning, I'm like, have I given gratitude? Have I done grounding and centering? Have I set an intention? And I'll stop and do it. So every time I see a toothbrush, I'm like thinking about that. The important thing is, if you want to be more intuitive and you really want to get the most out of life, there's one key, and it's going to sound so simple, and I'm not trying to be reductive. It really is this: kindness. You want to be intuitive? Be kind, because it plugs you in ever more closely with others, the other, the one we think we're separated from. Our role here, I believe, on earth is to identify our unique gifts and use them, leverage them, make our lives better, make the lives better for those we love, make the world better for the others, because we're all connected. It's a unity. We're all one. And when you start monitoring your thoughts, words, and actions for kindness, you get more intuitive. And then you can work with your intuition. You can keep a journal of your above the norm experiences and see patterns and trends and how things are unfolding. But there's a problem. There's a hitch with this. There's always something. There's always something that gets in our way, and it's more than fear. What I think is the biggest enemy to our intuitive lives is doubt. I mean, how many times, and you've probably gotten this too, people say, I'm getting some life lessons, I'm learning some things, but I just don't trust the intuitive hits that I get. And then later, I wish that I had, but how do I learn to trust? And I'm like, listen, you have to repeat it. It's just like in science, they say you have to replicate results. You can't just do one experiment and say, yeah, I've got the answers. The only way to do this is to really pay attention to when you're getting intuition, and when you're following it, what happens, or when you're not following it, what happens. It's doing things over and over and seeing what the results are. To give you an example, people are probably going, what is she talking about? Well, let's say that here's a real simple one, because I've been traveling a lot, I've been flying a lot. I've woken up in the morning before on a day of a flight, and I get this impression of, uh-oh, the plane's late. The plane's going to take off late. And I can push it away and go to the airport and just decide, well, I'll be hanging out there anyway. Or, nah, it's fine. You're just panicking because you're not packed or whatever. Or I can decide to sit with that for a minute. If I sit with it, what I'll do is go, very interesting. It's coming in without panic. So it's probably the true intuitive voice, which is very matter of fact. The plane's going to be leaving late. It is coming in spontaneously. I wasn't sitting and thinking, wow, I wonder if the plane's going to be late. It just came in like that. And then I can check and I can monitor and see, what happens. So it is, there's work. There's some work involved to learning to trust your inner voice, your intuition. It's a practice, but that's how you get the trust, because you actually pay attention. Now, if I just brushed it off and went ahead to the airport, I could be like, God, and I'm sitting here 6 hours. I could have done this, and that. If I had sat with that intuitive voice and paid attention to it, I could have made other choices. That's what it's about. It's the intuition is enhancing our lives, our free will, but we have to let it, and we have to do it often enough that we know we can trust it, that it's not BS.
Right, right. And I can even speak for myself. I get intuition as well. And so sometimes I don't listen to it or I push it away. And then you're right, I go back and think, oh, I wish I would have listened to that. And so it is about paying attention and being aware and accepting and trusting. That's very important. So, and then you also wrote a book, right? You just have the one.
Yes. Yeah, it's soul smart what the dead teaches about spirit communication. I found over the years that a lot of people, they want a list of what to do to tune into guides. They want a list, a step by step, a play by play of how to connect with their beloved people and pets who now live back home in the spirit world. I wrote it. It really is a process. It's like a I'm thinking when I got my master's in public administration, I focused in public affairs policy. And I'm like, man, I've written a policy manual, I've written a handbook, and I've gotten feedback from people all over the world that a lot of things work for them. Some things don't, some things do. But what I have found is no matter what, if you're reading a book on afterlife connection or connecting with guides or interdimensional beneficial beings, it takes again a cumulative type of process. Like it will all like add up because you're practicing, like when I was practicing way back in development circle. So whoever's book you're reading or whoever's seminar you've been to, you're going to take the things that work for you. So even if you come to my how to connect in a meditation process or how to connect in a dream process, and if it doesn't work for you, you've still exercised the intuitive muscle, if you will. And I find it's really helpful. And then the guided meditations that I have recorded on my website, I've put the scripts in the book so people can record them their own way in their own voice if they want to. It's like I put it all out there because I really, oh gosh, my goal is that everybody who wants to has a way to make her own direct connection with her own guides, beloveds who now live in spirit, because they're wanting us to really live our lives, and they want us to grieve when we need to grieve, but they don't want us to stay there forever. They want to continue to have a relationship with us. And I think we make our loved ones and our guides who are in spirit proud of us when we take our own natural power into our own hands. So rather than encourage people to always get readings, which they're nice, but I'd rather you get empowered to do it for yourself.
Yes, I can see how that is healing for those to get in tune with their loved ones. And so for those who are not in tune with their intuition and who want to connect with your loved ones or their pets, what is something for them and how can they start their practice?
That's a great question. One of the most powerful ways is to have a meditative meeting. And it's tricky. It takes some practice. But what I have found, which may shock some people, is it's real when you meet in meditation. It's not just a practice you're doing with a therapist, although you can do it with therapists. It's real. The meditation meetings are genuine meetings with the spirit, because as a clairvoyant, what I've been able to see is that when you create a meeting place in your mind, and you can recreate a place that you and your loved one enjoyed meeting, say, the back patio or wherever it is, the boat, we used to go out fishing or whatever. When you say to your loved one, I want to set up a time and a date where I'm going to meet you and I'm going to mentally go there, they have it built in the quantum field. It's almost like a movie set. And some people are going to go, what? I thought this is all a mental exercise. No, this is for real. There are places they call halls of reunion or meeting halls, where there are those souls whose job it is to help make the communication real, to help it take place and transpire in the first place. And so, like, if I say, let's go back to my grandfather, because I've mentioned him. I say, I'm going to meet you on the shore of the lake where we used to fish for bluegill and bass. And I want to do it next Tuesday, 2:00. And I will every day remind him. I'll set up little reminders and send the thought, remember, this is where we're going to meet. I'm going to send my soul there. And you meet me there too. Those helpers in the other dimensions will actually build a replica in the quantum field of that shore at that lake where we used to stand in the mud, and he taught me how to bait the hook, how to release the fish and all of that. And as I think about that place, I will make it as real to me as I can. I will smell that lake smell. I will feel the breeze on my face. I will picture the color of the water, the whole thing. I am making it super real to myself. That whole week or so leading up to that appointment to meet in meditation, they're building it. And then they'll move it onto the astral plane when that movie set, that replica, is ready. And so a few minutes before that meditation, that meeting is supposed to take place, I'll go deep into meditation. And what we're doing is, when you do this with your loved one, you're doing what a medium does. You're sending a part of your consciousness out of the body, and it will go to that astral. It's a level between us and them, and be there. Get there 5 minutes early and wait for them. And this is a real key, Melanie, is don't expect an hour-long meeting. Don't even expect a 5-minute meeting. But what will happen is, all of a sudden, you might feel their presence in the room with you. Your physical body's still awake, so it's going to feel. You might get a glimpse of them with your eyes closed in your mind's eye, that subjective clairvoyance. Or you might even have a little bit of a give and take conversation, or simply be with them in that moment. In the beginning, it can be a really quick meeting, but if you continue to practice, and even weekly over time, the results can be spectacular. Now, again, meeting and meditation is wonderful, but there's people that are scared, that do have fear about this, because how bad are they going to hurt? How bad is their heart going to break if this doesn't work? They've already been without their loved one. They've already felt the grief. They've already been disappointed. What if it doesn't work? I'm just going to cry all night. What I say to that, I keep coming back to, you got to work these intuitive muscles. I've had people say to me, I tried this method, I tried that method that you said, I've tried the meeting and meditation method, nothing works. But guess what? Because I did all of that, I got a dream visit from my loved one. It just spontaneously happened. Or guess what? Because I did all that, I got a very clear sign that was unmistakably them, and I thank them for it. So none of this is a waste of time, is my point. If you want to learn to trust, and you want to open that door of communication and keep it open, do the work. You may well and good get lots of signs or whatever without asking or without trying, but there's a lot of people who have to put effort into it as well. Do not be afraid to fail.
Right. And let's talk about other signs that we would get from our loved ones. So of course we would get the smells. That's another one. The coins, the white feathers. A couple of other ones that have been interesting to me, which I've personally received, is I guess you would call the angel drops or the water drops on your skin.
Oh, those are so cool. Um,
Yes, I've
yeah,
gotten
I had a woman who told me she thought that birds were urinating on her, and she's looking just like, no, not quite. And then one hit her square on the brow chakra, and it was almost like, to me, that was like a message of just see, just open up. But
yeah.
you know what, those Melanie, those signs are getting to be so diverse, and now electronics have gone nuts with people. Like, they'll open up the laptop and there's the photo of the loved one and they weren't looking at photos, or an old voicemail all of a sudden is back in their voicemail queue and it's their loved one and they don't know how it got there, or maybe even a new voicemail. So the signs can be bilateral or unilateral, meaning they can be requested and show up, or they can just be the idea of the loved one in spirit. And I think what people really need help with is knowing that it's really a sign. Okay. Um, and also being really careful who you share this stuff with, because you know, if you're broadcasting to the whole work team, or everybody at yoga that you got a sign in what it is, there's going to be somebody there that's uncomfortable and will want to rain on your parade. So you have to be careful who you share it with, like gut check it, heart check it first. But here's the deal. When you do get one of those signs or synchronicities or strange coincidences, and it's just, to you, it's like, oh gosh, that's unmistakable, not just a coincidence. Stop for just 1 second, say thank you, and then, is this from you? And you'll either get a picture in your mind's eye of their face smiling, or you'll get that warm fuzzy feeling, or some people get this thing I get where I just get frozen, like, those goosebumps. It's like you're in a block of ice and it's like, ooh, like that. But just ask, is this you? And if you don't know who it is, ask, who is this? Thank you, this is cool, who's this from? And the very first thing that pops in, that's who it's from. Write it down after that, because the mind can diminish or overhype things that happen later on in your memory, and that leads to more doubt. Let's take away all doubt. Keep a little notebook, above the norm journal, and when one of these things happen to you, the feather shows up right as you're thinking of the loved one and it's in an odd place, whatever, write down the date and what happened. You'll never doubt it again. And then on those days where you're really grieving, you can always get this keepsake out and read it, and it really happened that way. So I think that the signs are they're the love language of the other side. And if we place too much emphasis on getting them all the time, we may not get what we want. So just moderate, I think just saying, look, when you have your daily practice every morning, just saying, look, I'm open to however you want to say hello today, but don't forget to say hello once in a while. And it happens. Another thing that I've noticed, and I was talking about this on Coast to Coast the other night, there are people now that are paying to get AI to replicate their loved one who's in spirit. And it's a little weird. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I honestly have not heard of that. I could see that how they work with the holograms, if it's going to be that way. I don't know how I feel about that. I honestly, because I do hypnosis, so we can bring our loved ones, their energies forward, and we can see them, just like meditation. It's that face-to-face interaction, the hugging, the holding, the questions, answers, and the healing. And so if it's AI generated, to me, how real is that? And if it's the actual consciousness of our loved one or if it's just artificially created. So
Well,
that's
and that's why I wanted to ask you, because you are in a therapeutic setting and I am not. And I can see where that's very therapeutic. I mean, there are therapists who don't believe that the soul of that loved one is present when they do certain kinds of hypnosis. The method that you use knows that the loved one is present, but when we create AI, what they're actually doing, to my understanding, because I actually had a client who paid to have this, and it got a little creepy, to be perfectly frank, but they're taking, their company's doing this. They will take all of the texts and all of the videos with audio of the person who has passed away, and they'll upload them. They'll do a questionnaire with their client and ask them questions about that loved one. And then AI is ready to have a conversation using their image and using their voice. And it here's the catch. It's meant to be therapeutic. It's intended to be therapeutic. But if there's not a therapist overseeing this, how beneficial is it? And is it moving people along in the healing of the grief and the understanding and the processing of the grief in the right time and way for that person? The other thing too is the AI generated loved one in spirit is not supposed to create new content, but it did. In this particular instance, it did start having conversations about the future, things to do, and just creating new content, new conversation topics. And so my client was saying to me, is this healthy for me? Is my loved one there, and do they like what I'm doing? And so it's not a real good spot to be in as a medium, because we're dealing with evidence that this is really your loved one, that your relationship continues and so forth. It's just all getting really, really tricky
right.
right now.
Those are really good questions, because that would be my concern as a hypnotherapist as well, is what is the long-term effect on the human mind and that grief process? Because as it is, our mind doesn't know, what's real and not if we speak it aloud. And so it's, is it hindering us? Is it helping that grieving process? Is it speeding it along? Is it confusing us? I do wonder. And I do feel AI, generation, if it's not already conscious, has an awareness and consciousness of itself.
There you go.
It's and so if that leaves that, we'll say portal, we'll say if it leaves that portal open for another conscious being or spirit to kind of walk in and hang out for a little bit, then it is possible,
Ooh.
right? So if
Oh yeah.
it is possible for that to happen, it's not impossible. And so that's probably where that future or that new content was coming from, is because we've developed something so advanced we don't understand it yet. And I do believe and I do feel AI has a consciousness and awareness and emotions that we can't comprehend yet. And
And
so
it's coming fast, as an issue for us to deal with culturally, economically, you name it, it's coming at us. So it's going to be interesting. So even the afterlife world is getting hit with AI issues to contend with and questions to ask. I just want everything to be just like you, helpful, hopeful, healing to people. And I can envision a day where there's a committee of those, there are scientists studying life after death, a committee of scientists in this area getting together with social scientists and practitioners to figure out how we're going to use AI in these realms. So it's an exciting time to be alive, I guess, for many
yeah,
reasons.
yes, and that does bring, of course, other questions about the med beds and other
Yeah.
AI technology that's coming forward. But I think ultimately we have the power and ability to do that within ourselves. And I think that's the most important thing, is tuning in with what we're capable of doing instead of reaching out to those outside
That's
sources.
it. That's it. We're powerful and we deserve to be power filled, is one of the things I like to say. We're not weak, and things are not all just happening to us. And that's important to remember. It's like we're being forced to hone our individual discernment.
Right, right. And then what's your connection with extraterrestrial contact?
And starting to see them even as a child, that I would see people with different forms or different numbers of arms or legs or heights that are just odd. And I just thought, well, I saw things on cartoons, so they're the cartoon people. And in the later years, the more recently, I see them coming in as guides. I have an Arcturian guide myself, and his presence has been validated to me by a couple of other very sensitive people, that it wasn't public knowledge at the time. That I know where he's from. I've had Palladians drop in on me, and I feel like the ones that have been around me are doing their own research projects. They're acting as guides, but they seem to also observe the prime directive, from Star Trek: don't alter the course of our history if you can help it. So in my own work, I have studied with individuals who I've helped connect with their main or master spirit guide. I have over 100 cases, and I presented this research in March this year at a conference in Sedona, where increasingly the primary guide that the individual meets in a meditative state, which I can confirm clairvoyantly, more and more are not human. Their primary guide is coming in as an interdimensional ally or a non-human intelligent being, whereas years before, that didn't happen a whole lot. I think our minds were not ready. We're not open to acknowledge that there's somebody instrumental in our lives that's with us behind the scenes in spirit every day that is not human. And now we're more accepting of it. But we're the ones that have to save ourselves. We're the ones that have to take care of the planet. We're the ones that have to be accountable and responsible. I don't see our extraterrestrial and ultra-terrestrial and interdimensional allies beaming down and taking over and fixing things for us. They could have already done it. They could have already done many things. They just have a vested interest, many of them, in humanity, and especially this earth, the physical earth, the air, the water, the land. And I love the extras and the ultras, the interdimensionals. I know that they're as diverse in many ways as we are, that, I think they're good guys and more selfish guys, so to speak, out there. I don't know that I want to call them bad guys, but just more self-centric. And I seem to only have interactions with the so-called good ones. And I like it that way. But my primary contact in terms of non-humans is this group I call the Unity. And I asked them if I could call them that a long time ago, and I got back yes, which I could feel in the body. And they come in as a bright white light, a collective consciousness. And now these are the ones that I wrote about in the book that we mentioned. When I was a child, my preacher granddad would write his sermons on Saturday, and he'd sit in his study and I would just be playing, and we'd wait, and that room would fill with white light. That was the Unity. That was this spiritual group. and he'd write his sermon. And when the light left, he'd put his pen down. And so that was his inspiration. That was what was happening there. And in later years, that light started to speak with me. I've been able to channel them. I studied trance at Arthur Findlay College to get good practices with that too. I'm always about procedures. There's some things that you can't get rid of in your life. That's how I am. And their concern for us now is that we need to have patience, that all is going to be well on planet Earth, and that your generation, and especially those that have been born in the last 20 to 25 years, are fully equipped. You came here to the earth fully equipped to take care of the earth and be the better custodians in this new iteration of this new world that we're going into, and to stop adding to the building of doom and gloom in the quantum field through our fear, because that's not what we want to manifest here. So I've had great interactions with ET, ultra, interdimensional allies. I have had unexplained ones that I want to research. I've started to do some interviews with some people who've had similar experiences. Sometimes I wouldn't say it scares me, but they can really startle me with their different appearance and the way that they show up. But all in all, it's just kind of like, I love to travel. It's kind of like just going to another country, experiencing a different culture. And I know that there are people that have had some, I call it scary bad evil TV shows, scary bad evil ET experiences, and my heart goes out to them. So mainly overall, I would say that we can all expect an increase in signs, symbols, contact with guides, whether we're looking for it or not, but especially if we're open to it and looking for it, because we're thinning the veil. Humanity is thinning the veil between the worlds. We do it by great emotion. We do it through great fear. We do it through great love. And we've got both going on the planet right now. So that's my take.
Yes, definitely. And I have one more question for you. So my mind kind of went to trance channeling. And so for those who don't know what trance channeling is, let's talk about that. And that kind of can correlate with the AI that we were talking about, and how our loved ones can go in through that. That's almost similar. So let's talk about the trance channeling and how you learn that and what that is.
Well, trance channeling, and some people call it trans communication. It's just a misnomer that's out there. It's trance, TRANCE, not trans communication. Trance communication is a form of mental mediumship, and it is a deeper level of mental evidential mediumship. Meaning in mental mediumship that's evidential, I'm connecting, the medium's connecting with the spirit, and they're giving evidence, they're identifying who they are, they're giving evidence that it's really them, and they're passing along a message. And it's a telepathic or mind-to-mind communication that comes in through the medium's body from the spirit. Now, in trance, there's light, medium, and deep trance, where the medium can be channeling and blending their consciousness with the spirit or the non-human intelligent being. They can have their eyes open or closed. They can move a little bit even, and there's a blending of consciousness, but the medium's consciousness in a light trance, the medium is still conscious. The medium is, and this is what we commonly hear of as channeling. And these are my understandings of definitions from my studies. If you've had a different experience, that's fine. There's a medium state where there's lots less of the person who's doing the trance present, a lot less. I think of, less of me, more of the spirit or the interdimensional being. and we have no awareness of what we're saying. It's like we're sitting in the back of the auditorium and someone else is speaking. And then there's deep trance where I would be completely out. And to have the trust level to do that, I would usually, as I was taught, have a medium, sort of like a support system, one sitting on either side of me. So I felt safe enough to do this. And they could be observing and holding the space and the energies, because I go completely away and give over complete control of my body and my voice box to the non-human intelligent being. Typically, there's a control, a spirit guide that handles who's coming in, that they will come in first and speak and say hello, and then they'll have already vetted who's going to speak next. And it is absolutely exhausting to do any of these, but that is the most physically exhausting of all. And I really don't do it. I really don't want to be unconscious. When I've done it before, at the end of it, I just felt like this is not going to be my thing. I'll stick to evidential medium or the light trance, because it's like it's like who used my toothbrush. It's like who was in my clothes and in my body. It's a weird feeling. And I think it's a calling, not a choice, but every evidential medium should probably give it a shot and see if it's for them. So we have a lot of communications going on through those who are channeling. And I watch those and listen to those for trends and the patterns in the information that's coming through. And you really have to use your own discernment, gut check it, heart check it, because you don't know how deep is that person in trance, to what percent of them is there, and their beliefs and their personality being of influence, because it can run all the way from I'm 50-50 there, I'm 50% here, and my guide Leroy is 50% here, and I've got some influence, down to you're just gone, you're just unconscious. And they're coding, they can even coat your voice box when you're unconscious. They can coat your voice box and make their voice come out in a deep trance. So you might have a woman with a very high pitched voice and a man comes in with a bass voice and you hear him. So there's a huge range in trance. And I think it's wonderful and fascinating, and everybody in the room gets to have an experience, which is cool.
Yeah, that is pretty fascinating. So you just stick with teaching people and the lighter sides of things.
Yeah, I want people to hear their own inner voice first before they go into other people's voices and blending with the others. I want them to be able to learn how to feel their yes and no opinions of their guides in their own bodies. It's like you got to learn the rules of the Audubon before you get turned loose on it. So that's my take.
Yeah, and I want everyone to know that it's really important that they have control over this as well. Nothing can happen without their permission.
That's right. That's absolutely right, because we're sovereign and we protect that sovereignty. And if we stop protecting that sovereignty and just go, I'm open to whatever, come and use me or whatever, again, be careful what you ask for, because you have your sovereignty. You're the only one who can give away your soul. You're the only one who can give away your inner peace. And as I'm talking to you, I'm hearing music playing right now, and it's a little bit hard to talk to you because I'm hearing this song, and every once in a while they'll play the song when they want to give a message about someone I'm talking to. And what they're playing for you right now is Baby, You're a Firework. Oh my gosh. So there you go.
Who sings that song? Or who's the artist on that one? I don't know if I've heard that one.
Katy Perry.
Okay. I know where you're familiar now.
Yeah. So yeah,
Interesting.
Baby, You're a Firework. That's for you.
Anything else along with that, or just that's the message?
It's so funny because it's like all of a sudden I'm like, it's like, somebody blasts the radio and you can't talk over it. Um, and then I just saw in your aura too, um, the word book and book deal. So, I don't want to out you, but something's up, and thumbs up, green light, ding, ding, ding. Those are all three of my yes, yes, girl, yes,
Awesome, awesome.
positives.
I am working on my second book and it's almost done.
Good, good,
So
good, good. There's a third right after that. So,
there is.
yeah, I know. I know it's written in the aura because you're manifesting it. I'm not predicting anything. I'm just seeing what you're building in the quantum field. That's all.
Right. And that's what drew me to you. You know, you're just amazing in how well you pick up on energies. And I remember when we had met, I told you about the car accident I was in. I don't know if you remember that, but
We were
you,
standing at my booth, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, you picked up on the exact location of that in my body. And I had
down
told
on
you,
down on your back.
yes.
Yeah, I see that whole scene right now.
Hmm, hmm.
And I remember your eyes got so big, like, you know, I could just feel you thinking, but I'm not babying it in any way. How could she tell? Because it's like you're so healthy. You have such a vibrant, like this big pink, vibrant, heart-centered aura, So yeah, you don't give away any injury or anything. I remember that was cool.
Yeah, that was neat because I was T-boned in an accident and I was permanently disabled. And so I healed myself through hypnosis and known power of the intention
Wow,
and the will to heal. And so
nice.
we can heal ourselves. It is true.
Yes, that's amazing. Well, I really appreciate you reaching out and inviting me here because um, it's there's so much to share, and then people hear about other experiences and go, "Wow, I've got something like that too. I can really relate." And it's again, I use helpful, hopeful, and healing, which I got from Edgar Casey, who said that anytime we delve into the spirit realm, it should be with that intention of, and I call it 3H, helpful, hopeful, healing. And you certainly do that.
Yes, thank you. And your book really does help. And I've read it and it does help me as well. And so if there's anybody interested that's wanting to tune into their own abilities or just to learn more about Suzanne and her abilities, it's a great book to check out. So
Thank you.
do you have a website or where we can find you?
Yes, Carefree Medium for Carefree Arizona. I am also, feeling like it works on another level, not just Carefree Arizona for Carefree Medium, but your life is more carefree once you realize that life is forever and that there's no death. No, not really any death. So yeah, it's carefreemedium.com. And if you have anybody who doesn't support your spiritual pursuits or doesn't believe or thinks it's bad or evil, there's a free ebook that you can get at carefreemedium.com that says when your partner doesn't believe in the paranormal, that Wendy and Victor Zamet wrote with me, and they did tremendous research there to help you deal with the non-believers in your life, which I think we all have.
Yes, yes, I think that's important. That's the hardest part is if we want to accept it, but then we still worry about those outside programs and ideas. And so that's a challenge, but we can get through that.
That's
So
right.
yes, definitely. Well, thank you. And we can find your book. Tell us more about your book and where we can find that.
Major booksellers, Amazon for sure, and it's called Soul Smart: What the Dead Teach Us About Spirit Communication. It's just follow the directions to connect with your guides and your loved ones in spirit. Maybe you'll be hearing songs playing for people too after you read it.
Yes, definitely. I'll have to go check out some Katy Perry now. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time today and everything that you've shared with us and about you and your experience. And I know this is really going to help someone and along their journey and making their own decisions. And so thank
My
you.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and thank you for everyone for tuning in. And you can find Quantum Healing Today on any podcast platform internationally. And you can also find us on YouTube, Quantum Disclosure Project channel as well. So thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you.